All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to On Texas Football. Welcome to the Tuesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. I am Jeff Howe. It's the normal Wednesday crew on a Tuesday night. Had to rearrange some things, but that's all right. The more the merrier. We've got lifetime Longhorn 2005 national champion Marcus Myers in the house, and as Rod Babers has dubbed him, the young prodigy here at On Texas Football, the well-traveled. Even if he goes to the wrong airport, he'll eventually get where he needs to be on game day. He is CJ Vogel. We're taking your questions, comments, concerns, airing your grievances. See, we already got some of that in the chat tonight. Chat is lively. Go ahead and get your questions in. We'll get to them. Super chats, as always, jump to the front of the line. Guest tonight, Dr. Brett Robin will join us at some point tonight. 25 days until kickoff. Brett Robin wore 25 on the 40 acres. Marcus, one of your former teammates, joining us on the
show. Indeed. Yes, sir. Dr. Brett. I'll be curious what stories we can get into.
I forget, Marcus, were y'all in the same position room, or did you make the position change after Brett left?
I think it was after he left. So I got stuck having to try to cover him in the flat from time to time, which was not a fun proposition. And then, I grew up in Austin, so I remember watching Brett when he was at Westlake, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but, I remember the year he was all Syntex or something. That was always kind of the big thing is, who ends up on the all Syntex team in the Statesman. And I remember him, I think he had 20 some odd touchdowns or something like that year. So it'll be cool to have him on.
That was how I got my news back in the day. The Austin American Statesman, one of the couple of local papers in my era. All right, let's talk about Longhorn camp, though. Let's talk about it right now. CJ, I just want to start. What's on your mind? I know you had an article today over on TexasFootball.com about Derek Williams and some of the communication stuff on the back end. I don't know if that's top of mind for you or if you got something else, but what's on your mind camp wise?
Yeah, look, Texas is on the field this evening. First fully padded practice. Marcus, you could probably talk a little bit about how exciting that is for this team, but going back to Monday and hearing from Steve Sarkisian about just how physical practice has been already. Look, now that you're fully padded up, you can – I know they probably say don't take guys to the ground, right? Keep everybody up, but it's a different level whenever you get to those live team situations when fully padded. So who starts to separate themselves? Is there someone at the left guard spot that separates? Linebacker is another really underrated position battle at the moment with Justin Cryer earning a lot of praise. Obviously, Ty Anthony Smith had his best practice of fall camp on Monday, and then safety, right? And Jeff, that's where I wrote about today is who starts to separate at safety. To me, it feels like the time that Jonah Williams really needs to separate with the pads fully on, at least join that conversation with Derek Williams in that safety 2, safety 3 position battle.
The good news there, glad you said that, because Marcus, by no means is what's happened through the first 5 practices irrelevant, because it's all data points the staff's going to use to figure out who they can trust, formulate depth charts, all that fun stuff. But this is when it starts getting real. This is when you've got your live periods during practice, your inside run, your pass scale is going to be live, your team periods are going to be live. This is when you really start figuring out, all right, in this August heat, when it's miserable, and you get to that team period at the end of practice, who's going to step up and still be making plays? This is where you really start to find some stuff out about your team.
Yeah, man, this is where that separation begins. You get to hear the pads popping, and it really is kind of the end of talking season. I always kind of would laugh at how amongst ourselves we get to John, and then once you put on the pads, a lot of that stops, right? You can talk all you want throughout the summer workouts and, early on when you run around in shorts and tees. But, when you put on the pads, then that's when, some separation, really truly begins. And, I think we've talked about this before as well, Jeff. I mean, they don't have much time here, right? There'll probably be about a week or so more of true evaluation before they really start to kind of fully narrow down, all right, who are the guys we think we need to go with and who are the ones we need to start getting game ready for week 1. And so, camp will continue, through its duration, but before you know it, you're getting into game prep pretty quickly.
Yeah, CJ, there was some stuff in the chat early on, actually, before we even went live about the offensive line, and this is one of those things where we're actually starting to find out. Like to this point, it's been more about we've heard not so much about the group, but about some of the individuals. Like, hey, maybe Lawrence Seymour looks like he's always done the left guard job, and Moby Siani's had a pretty good start to camp. But CJ, this is where I am on the O line. Even if I heard that they were just dominating the defense in live periods and in scrimmages, to me, none of that's going to matter until I actually see it in a game. And probably even if they did it against Texas State, I don't want to see it against Ohio State. I don't want to see it the following week. Like it's just, I don't know, that unit based on what we saw last year. To me, anyway, it doesn't have the benefit of the doubt for me right now. You just got to keep building. You just got to keep that.
No, they have to show it to me every time that they can, right? And that's every step of the way until SEC play begins. That's right now in fall camp as full pads are on. What does that look like in the scrimmage on Saturday? What does that look like in the second scrimmage the following Saturday? Of course, I believe they'll have a mock game, but that next checkpoint will be Texas State. And, of course, the big test, you could probably put it up as, you know, when you're back in at high school or middle school, you had like those big tax tests at the end of semesters. Like that is a big piece of what the grade will be for the season. Like where can you basically plot out your future education is based off of how you test and you score in those, standardized testing situations. That's the Ohio State game for me. Because look, Texas, regardless of who they throw out there or how many offensive linemen they throw out there against Texas State, should be able to score points. They should be able to move the football. They should be able to run the ball. But Ohio State's the one that you look at and you say, this group of Texas Longhorns should be competing at the highest level for a national championship this year. That's the big test early on in the season. Of course, you'll then have, another tune-up game and then Tennessee on the road, which I do think will be a test as well before the bye. But that's neither here nor there. Texas needs to figure out where they are deficient and where they can really hang their hat on with this offensive line group. And that's starting over the next 2 weeks, really, when they get full go in practice.
A lot of the experimenting going on early with cross-training a bunch of guys and Kyle Flood's trying to manufacture depth. We got some super chats coming in, so let's go ahead and get to those. Speaking of the offensive line will have a role in Colt Zeiler's question. Colt, thank you for the super chat. Said, which duo combines for more touchdowns this season? Coleman and Wingo or Smothers and Brown? And Marcus, Colt wants you to know you always have elite Longhorn gear. Where are you getting your gear from?
Well, there's some of the usual spots, right? Like you got Nike, Co-op always has some great stuff. And here lately, it's just become more and more people that are, getting official licensing from the university. For years, it was always pretty rough. They were pretty stern on who, they handed out the licensing to. So it's kind of expanded over the years, but a lot of times if it's not old stuff that I've had, it's Nike or the Co-op for the most part. And then this hat, this is my Rocky P special. He made sure he hooked up a number of us on the hat. So it's not quite dark yet. We haven't, fallen back time-wise, but I figured I'd rock it tonight.
Dude, my Rocky P hat is so gross now. I've worn it so much.
I only wear it indoors. Only wear it indoors.
Yeah, I messed it up. I'm sorry. But it was a great hat.
That's a dang coaching mistake. CJ, you think Coleman and Wingo more touchdowns or Smothers and Brown more touchdowns?
I think this is a great question. Because if it's Smothers and Brown, that tells me that Texas's offense, there's no weak spot with this Texas offense. Mm-hmm. If it's Smothers and Brown, look, Texas is running the football effectively, and they're converting in the red area. What's the other weak spot right now that you look at with this group if it's not running the football effectively and converting in the red area? Third downs, fourth downs, I feel like Texas has figured that out late in the year with the emergence of Arch Manning's leg. So that's what I look at and say, I hope it's Smothers and Brown. But I lean right now that it's going to be Coleman and it's going to be Wingo because I go back to the spring where Jelani McDonald was asked, what is it like in the red area, right? What is it like when those battles get going inside the 10 or 15-yard line in the red area when the offense and defense go live at it? And he goes, look, just, go find number 8. That's where the ball's going. They're throwing the ball to Cam Coleman anytime they can in that red area. So that's something that I look at right now and say I hope it's Smothers and Brown, but I lean Wingo and Coleman.
Yeah, Coach Scott 619. This is one way to put it, Marcus. So Arch is a TD vulture. I just feel like if it's gonna be Hollywood Smothers and Raleek Brown, it'll probably be because they break some long runs or longer runs. When you get inside, especially when you get inside the 10, like that's Arch territory. That's RPO stuff all day long, especially once you get into SEC play, like against basically Hollywood Smothers and Raleek Brown probably need to pad their numbers in the touchdown department against Texas State and UTSA, because once you get to Tennessee, Oklahoma, that's Arch territory. That's when you need Arch to be the red zone weapon that he is.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you, Jeff, and I'm right in line with CJ's thinking as well. I hope it's Smothers and Brown. As of today, I'm probably leaning Coleman and Wingo for the same reasons that you both mentioned. So, in either scenario, if it's if the total between the two is pretty close and pretty high, right, then you got to feel good about how the season is going. But I certainly can see, Arch taking some of what would be some of those, shorter touchdowns and expect, Brown and Smothers to do more of their damage from a bit further away.
Although, CJ, again, I love going back to your numbers. Raleek Brown's Arizona State production shows, at least for the PFF data shows, other than Arch, he's your most accomplished short yardage option on this team.
Yeah. And Jeff, I still don't know if I understand it fully, right?
All right.
Because, he's a guy that's, I would say a generous 5'9", 200 pounds, right in that range. But I think it's just that short area wiggle. And bear with me. It's just the ability to get small in the hole and make sure that you're falling forward. You're not getting hit and getting blown backward. Right, you're finding ways to get small and move forward. Yeah, come on, guys, in the chat, we got to figure this one out. We just got to figure out better ways to describe.
Yeah, it's hard with the night crew because it was a different breed of cat on this live stream, our live stream audience. But I love you guys. But yeah, it can go off the rails at times. But I got my hands at 2 and 10. Let's get it off the media and get it back in the lane. With that said, we got some super chats to get to. We'll get to those here in just a minute. But right now, I want to thank a couple of our sponsors here on the Tuesday night live stream, including our lead sponsor tonight, which is Andy Ludicky in My Perfect Franchise. Are you stuck in a corporate rat race with 2 weeks of PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general? If that's you, then call Andy. He'll take you through a process to help you find a business that'll fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership is something that's not for everyone. But if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. We want to thank Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream, along with Mark Saunders, long-running sponsor of the Recruiting Breakdown here on the channel. When it comes to protecting all of your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Here's some good news. And Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders is the only insurance agent you're going to need. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. If you're looking for someone local to the Austin and Round Rock area, give Mark a call at 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you'll be in good hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. Again, give Mark's office a call, 512-218-8571. That's 512-218-8571. And a big thank you to Mark Saunders for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. All right, super chats are starting to stack up, so you guys are making it lively tonight. Much appreciated. Colt, thank you for the super chat earlier. Rocky P, thank you for the super chat. CJ, I will not address you by your Christian name, so I'll let that. I believe you. Maybe your parents do that, but I'll leave that for that. So, are we in the golden era of Texas in the NFL with all the talent in the NFL and what is coming? Could this era surpass the 2000s?
It's a great question. And what is it? Texas is in line again for another double-digit draftee season in the next spring. Who knows how high that number might get, but we just saw Bijan sign the richest running back contract in NFL history for about 10 minutes. And, Xavier Worthy, it sounds like Adonai Mitchell is putting up some big-time numbers. I saw someone predict Byron Murphy is en route to be a all-pro this year. So, there's a lot of fun expectations for all of these Texas Longhorns. Again, Anthony Hill, the Dolphins just released one of the sorrier NFL depth charts I've ever seen, but littered throughout it is Trey Moore starting at outside linebacker. I mean, Michael Taft was second string, Quinn Ewers was second string. So everywhere you look now, and it wasn't like this for a long time, every NFL team has 1, 2, and we all know Sean Payton loves his Longhorns. Like a couple teams have 5 or 6 guys. So it's a fun couple of years ahead for Texas fans following the NFL.
CJ, does your mom or anybody in the family ever drop like the full name when you're in trouble?
No.
You get that treatment? No? Okay.
I don't give them a reason to.
There you go. That's a very nice political answer. Hey, Marcus, getting back to the point though about Longhorns in the NFL.
Yeah.
By numbers, yeah, I think probably if you really broke it down, but I keep going back to kind of that run in the early to mid 2000s, especially. You had that time like right around 2002-ish where Priest Holmes was MVP of the league. You had Ricky just putting up insane numbers with the Dolphins. So maybe that was the point where Texas might have been a little more prominent. But maybe in terms of numbers, we're probably entering. Bijan needs some company in terms of guys getting to the upper echelon of guys at their respective positions in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the only spot I was going to go there, Jeff. And, I think some of the guys that even came out then would have been better suited, coming out today in the style of game that the league, has kind of moved to. I think there were some players, on some of those earlier teams that would have certainly thrived under today's game that, were facing a bit more of an uphill battle just because it was still more of your, traditional, drop back pass and run kind of thing. And so you're right. Bijan certainly needs, a handful of these guys to kind of join them in that grouping, but they certainly have the opportunity to. I definitely believe that, a portion of, the early 2000s, Texas still kind of had that weird label on them as well of, being soft and at times you would hear kind of the rumor mill at work around draft season about, just people being unsure of what they were going to get. And I think they've, kind of played out of that. So for at least to that end of things, most of, this kind of generation of player, if you will, doesn't really have to contend with any of that nonsense. So.
All right, good stuff, Marcus. Sailor Joe with the super chat. Thank you, Sailor Joe, for the super chats. At O-line and secondary have all the eyes going into these scrimmages. What are some things we might also find out that general fans don't think of? Special teams, CJ, is the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Gio Spedic, from what I heard on, today's Tuesday, so Monday morning, went 4 for 4. He was the first kicker out there, so that's something to monitor. Who's returning kickoffs? We know the 3 that are returning punts. That's, of course, Ryan Niblett, Jermaine Bishop, and Dalen McCutcheon. But beyond that, how dynamic and, kind of elaborate are we seeing Texas getting from an offensive personnel look, right? I don't expect we're seeing 4 or 5 wide receiver sets, but the pony package has been mentioned. 2 tight ends has been mentioned. What else do we see with, kind of the plethora of toys that Sark will be able to use?
All right, Sailor Joe, I want to get back to your super chat here in just a minute, give it the attention it deserves. But right now, I mentioned him earlier in the show. We've got a special guest joining us right now. We are 25 days away from Texas kicking off the 2026 season. So right now, let's go to a former number 25, friend of the channel, Dr. Brett Robin, joining us tonight. Hey. Brett, how are you?
Excellent. Thanks for having me. How are you guys doing?
Thanks for the time, Brett. We're doing great. Anytime, Brett, we get to this time of year, high schools are back on the field. Texas is back in the field. Is this one of those times of year where you miss the game?
Always miss the smells, the camaraderie, the anxiety of what's going to happen, how the coach is going to come out and set the tone, all the fun things that you should know that you still get a little anxious about. But this is the best time of year. Getting all the butterflies out, getting on the field, and putting it to work.
What was this part of the year like, where fall camp's ongoing? You're kind of in the grind, but boy, it's still hot outside when it comes to Austin heat.
Yeah, it's hot, man. Every day is a survival. You're trying to make sure that you recoup after every practice. You're always trying to give it your all, trying to win a spot, whether it's on offense or special teams. Find your way on the team, figure out how to be a leader. doing all the little things, and then, you're so exhausted at the end of the day. Make sure you get rehydrated, get sleep, and get right back after it the next day. Of course, then this is also when all the Marcus knows these little injuries start nagging you and lining up. And one day, your ankle's swollen, and the next day your shoulder's sore. And you're trying to go into the season as healthy as you can be, but also you're competing for a job. So you're also playing as hard as you can. So, but yeah, exciting times every year.
Yeah, I mean, to your point too, Brett. I think I was a freshman your junior year. So at our time, you had the freshmen come in, for
Yep.
a handful of days before the upperclassmen came in, and we had true two-a-days, right? And so,
Oh, yeah.
at the time, I was trying to run around chasing a young spry, Brett Robin, when I had no clue of what I was really doing out there. For you. When you were kind of getting into those latter years of being at Texas, like, what was it like for you as, new guys kind of came into the fold? How did you try to kind of shepherd them along, both in the room and just as a team at large?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, every year is different. When you're a freshman, you're in survival mode. You're trying to figure out who's who and where to be and when to be there. And then you settle in, and as time gets older, all goes on, and you kind of get into the junior and senior years. You're more thinking team camaraderie and how can we get these new guys that need to play, figure out what they need, how we can help them. Every kid comes in from a different situation, and it's just like you don't know anything about them other than what you've heard. Something's good, something's bad, and a lot of times, like, they can be totally different. When they're on the field or off the field. And so you're really junior, senior year, you're comfortable in where you're at. You still are fighting for your job, but you're trying to bring the younger guys in and see how they can fit in and who's going to help you on your team.
Brett, some of those Texas teams you played on in the early 2000s, you guys were making that climb and everything there,
Putting Marcus right in the right spot.
Yeah, everything led up to the national championship in 2005. But as you're making that climb, what parallels do you see between what you guys were going through, trying to get to the top of the mountain, and where this Texas program has been under Sark for the last 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, it's the same climb. It's just like every year you're like getting a little bit closer and a little bit closer. I wasn't there to finally finish it, but I think, I'm sure Marcus and everybody would agree, the key figure was Vince. Vince was what took that we were right at the peak, and Vince just put it over the top. And so that's where, when I was a senior, Vince was a freshman. And I can remember like yesterday, the first time he took off from practice, and it's like, unbelievable, man. This guy's going to be something so special. And he didn't even know what he was doing. I mean, couldn't even call the play. He didn't have a read. He knew nothing, and still was just taking off, making people look stupid that had been there for 4 or 5 years. So, there's those kids are on the field like right now as freshmen. And so who's going to be the freshman, or maybe already the sophomore, or now the transfers?
Mm-hmm.
The game's totally different. Maybe we got the right transfer in the right spot. And that's what kind of tips it over the edge and puts us where we really want to be.
Yeah, that'd be pretty fun to play football like Vince Young without really knowing what you were doing.
He didn't know anything his freshman year. He could not call a play in the huddle. It was awesome. I mean, he just still made it work. And I was like, man, give this guy just another year or two of actually knowing what's going on out here, and nobody's going to stop him. And they didn't.
Ended up doing pretty well.
He did all right. Yeah, he did all right.
Okay.
He did okay.
Not too bad. Dr. Robin, I did want to ask you, because we heard from Sark, he said, look, I want to get these guys back together, right? Moving into Sand Jack for the week or two that they're in fall camp.
Good.
Did y'all do that? Was that something that y'all moved into the same or under the same roof for the time of fall camp?
No, I wish we had. I mean, back then, all the freshmen and sophomores had to stay on campus. So they let after your second year on campus, they let you off. And I think that's something, I bet you if you asked Mac, I bet he would say that if he had it to do over again, I bet he would put everybody under the same roof for the full camp. I will say, when I was a freshman, though, we still bussed over to intramural fields, and that was kind of a unique experience in that you're spending time on the buses with these guys, and depending on what bus you get on and get off, you may be sitting on more of a defensive bus, and so it gave us a chance to get to know guys. a little bit more that you otherwise, aren't sitting in your meeting rooms. We did that a little bit when we still walk up to Dinius, but it wasn't quite the same as, just getting on a bus and spending time together. So I wasn't aware Sark was doing that. I think that's a great idea. I think, get everybody just kind of on the same page, in the same boat, and rowing the same direction from the get-go.
You mentioned Coach Brown, and it brought to mind a story that every now and then, when I see your different ads popping up now on social media for your medical practice and stuff, of one time, most people tend to think, Coach Brown's just this really nice, unassuming guy, and he is, unless for whatever reason you're his target on a particular day. And I remember a practice my freshman year where I don't know what he was getting onto you about, but he went out of his way to keep on calling you Dr. Robin. Do you have like a favorite Coach Brown story?
Yeah, it was actually, I know exactly what you're talking about. And the word was actually Dr. Stupid is what I got. He lost his mind because I was a senior. Matt Melton, I think, was a freshman. He might have been a
sophomore. Yeah, he was with me.
Yeah, so I was a senior, and he was a younger guy, and we were doing a scrimmage. We were down on the goal line, and the whistle had blown. We kind of butted heads about the 1 yard line, and it was a stalemate. The whistle had blown, and Matt didn't give up. And I was trying to assert some senior dominance of you're not going to throw me around after the play. The whistle's blown, so I kind of gave him an elbow and threw the ball at him, and I got a 15-yard penalty, which was in practice. It was like didn't matter, but. Coach Brown didn't like that, and he was ready to make an example out of me. So he gave me the Dr. Stupid, you just cost the team. We're on the 1 yard line. Now we're going back to the 16-yard line and got to kick a field goal scenario. And my roommate, Matt Trissel, reminds me of that every time he calls me. And I answer the phone. He's like, "What's up, Dr. Stupid?" So
there you go.
that wouldn't lived on.
Hey, Brett, CB mentioned this in the chat a little bit ago. I just want to bring this up. He said Brett Robbins scored the final touchdown in the Cole Pittman game, that 44-14 win over North Carolina. Brett, that game in a lot of ways seems like it was not that long ago, but then you think that was 25 years ago this fall. That is one of the most emotionally charged games I've ever experienced anywhere, let alone at DKR. What do you remember about that day?
Oh man, that I'm getting chills just thinking about it right now. The whole week, we the whole off season, the whole summer, but we knew going into that game that was going to be, Cole's week and Cole's game, and his parents were in the locker room, and it was just beyond words of how emotional it was. But that was my first touchdown. It was just one of those things where I was like, all week long, I just had these dreams of scoring a touchdown and for Cole, for the game. No clue, obviously, it was going to be the 44th point. And, I remember Chance in the huddle, or Major calling the play. And I was just like, I have to score on this. There's no way I'm not scoring. I'm at the 10, 15 yard line, and I'm going to figure out a way to get in. And sure enough, it just happened. And, it's something you can't describe, but you can remember every single detail. And I can remember getting the ball, going through the line, seeing the end zone, everything about it, just like it was yesterday.
It's special stuff, Jeff. I'm glad I'm not the one that's finally got the chat out here feeling like they're old, reminiscing on that.
I'll take one for the team. It's fine.
But no, I did want to spin it a little bit back towards this season. Give me your expectations. What are you excited for when it comes to what this edition of the Texas Longhorns might look like in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's every year. It's exciting just to see who's going to be the guy, who's going to be the guy that makes the big difference. Always just from my doctor hat, worry about injuries, who's going to miss this, whatever part of the season, hopefully not the whole season, how that's going to shake out. We had the running back room got just decimated a while back, lost like 2 or 3 running backs in camp. So, those are the things you're just trying to hope that you make it through camp healthy and see who, what transfers now, what young guys, a lot of freshmen. Bishop, that guy seems like he's just going to be something super special and exciting. And I've only seen limited tape on him from high school, but yeah, just seeing what the new guys bring, and always fun to watch the Horns.
Brett, man, yeah, we don't need that. We don't need that yet. But if someone were to end up, we know that there is someone here in the area that has a practice. I know I had a chance to see you over at Tristle's house this summer. We were talking a bit about, the new facility that you're recently opened. If you could just share with everybody kind of what it is that you're up to and where your practice is and everything.
Yeah, so we just opened a new clinic in Georgetown, right off Westinghouse Road. Beautiful new clinic, got x-ray, state-of-the-art physical therapy, everything on site. But we still have our Austin office off Jollyville Road, kind of 183 Jollyville area. So I'm in Austin 2 days a week, Georgetown 2 days a week, doing orthopedic surgery, a lot of sports, joint replacements, some fractures. I really like to do a little bit of everything, hip, knee, shoulder. But I still do non-operative stuff too. So we do injections, get therapy going, all those sorts of things. Doesn't have to be surgery, but yeah.
That's awesome, man.
All right. We had 25 days left until kickoff. We had to bring in our favorite number 25, Dr. Brett Robin. Brett, thanks so much for taking the time to join us tonight. And, Brett, it's one of those deals. I hope I don't see you, but if I do get to see you before too long.
I hear that all day. Yeah.
All right, Brett. Thanks. Hook 'em.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
All right, brother. Hook 'em.
There goes Dr. Brett Robin, friend of the channel, number 25 for the Longhorns as we hit the 25-day mark until kickoff. And Marcus, I can't believe it's 25 years since that 2001 season, that Cole Pittman game against North Carolina. Yes, CJ, I don't mind taking one for the team and reminding everybody of their age. So I'll let you get off the hook tonight. It's on me on this one.
I was right there with you too, Jeff. That was my senior year of high school. I was at that game, so I remember it well.
Look, if it was 25 years ago, I guess you guys get you get some slack there, Jeff.
It was one of those deals where that was a birthday present. I got tickets for that game, and it's Saturday, so you have film. And so coach was like, "Hey, if you can be up here at 6 a.m. and get your film work in, you can go to the game." So not a lot of sleep from what I remember that night, but a memorable Saturday nonetheless. All right, let's thank another one of our sponsors here on the Tuesday night live stream. This is a good opportunity to let everybody know that this edition of On Texas Football is brought to you by Prize Picks. Y'all know we're always looking for ways to make watching the games a little more fun. That's exactly why we love Prize Picks. It's America's #1 sports picks app. And honestly, it's about as simple as it gets with Prize Picks. For player picks, all you got to do is choose more or less on player stats. All you got to do. Just lock in your lineup and you're good to go. If you're somebody who likes picking teams instead of individual players, Prize Picks has you covered there too, because you can now pick the winner, the spread, or the total on games or fights. Prize Picks is available in most states, including Texas, California, and Florida. So chances are, wherever you are, you can jump in today. And one of my favorite features about Prize Picks is that you can follow users if you want. If you like the picks they're making, you can tail them with one click. You can follow your friends' picks too if you like what they're doing. But here's the best part about Prize Picks. If you've never tried Prize Picks before, just play your first $5 lineup, and if you win, you'll get $150 in bonus lineups. Just make sure you use the code HMA when you sign up. They actually just updated this offer, so there's never been a better time to get started. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code HMA. Play that first $5 lineup, and if you win, you'll get $150 in bonus lineups. Again, Prize Picks app, code HMA. Good luck. And as always, please remember, play smart, play responsibly, play Prize Picks. All right, guys, we got a lot of supers to get to. I do want to bring up Sailor Joe's super because we had to get Dr. Robin on, so I want to make sure we get this. CJ, you talked about special teams. Marcus, I feel like Sark mentioned this a little bit on Monday. In the scrimmages, this is where you're not necessarily going to set rotations and snaps and playing time, but this is where Sark being over the offense and Will Muschamp being over the defense, these scrimmages are where you start to figure out who you can trust, and those guys kind of start to get put into that pot.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to try to do as much good on good as you can, but at the same time, you got to protect those guys. So I guess from also a standpoint of like what fans maybe aren't always thinking of off top is like some of what you're going to hear coming out of these practice reports is going to also be somewhat dependent on the groupings of guys that they're going against, right? Like it's not always just purely ones versus twos. It might be ones versus twos, with a couple of guys sprinkled in that they just want to see how they can handle it, right? Maybe not necessarily someone you're truly counting on to be a part of the twos right now, but maybe they surprise you. And then we've also talked a lot about, the depth that you're wanting to build. So, especially in the earlier ones, this is the opportunity to get, some different guys, different looks, maybe put them in some positions that, maybe they might not be the most comfortable with just yet, just to see how they respond, because some guys do kind of the lights come on, in game type scenarios a bit. And so those are the type of things that I'm typically kind of looking for. I also always try to caution, like, don't overreact to any of this, because again, it's controlled scrimmages, right? So there's going to be different points in time that Sark is going to spot a ball short just to see, okay, well, what is this guy's demeanor like, right? Like, coaches are going to play all these little games as well. And then on top of that, we always would talk about, the big eye in the sky don't lie. And a lot of times people think about that just being solely plays. Man, they film everything. So down to the sidelines and what guys are, doing when they're waiting their turn to get in the game. How much are you paying attention? That kind of stuff matters, when coaches are kind of trying to figure out, all right, how much am I willing to trust you on some of this stuff? So, yeah, I would agree with you, Jeff. I don't think it's anything that says it's like the end all be all, but it's certainly a decent barometer.
Yeah. I'll just say this, looking at the chat real quick, $8 DAR. This is nothing pertaining to what we're talking about, but you've got the post of the night, so you win so far. If you know, you know. And then Y Block was asking, practice tonight, or has it happened already today? Practice tonight. Sark moved practice to tonight. The team's got an off day tomorrow, so figure, hey, first thing in pads, let's just really crank up the tempo. Unfortunately, CJ, I don't know if you didn't get the memo. We were initially scheduled for player availability on the 40 today, but that was moved to Thursday. But CJ, I guess you didn't get the memo.
Yeah, who reads emails anymore? Yeah, so I went over there this morning. That time, I need to head back there now. You know why? Because Akon and Neo are having a concert over at the Moody Center. Come on.
Moody Center traffic, I want no part of that right now. So I don't care who's playing or what's happening. I want no part of that traffic down. It's bad enough on non-event days. I can't imagine what it's like right now. Anyway, just busting CJ's chop. Sailor Joe, thank you so much for the super chat. Got some more supers. All right, Cube with the super chat. Thank you so much. Said in basketball, great shooters like Steph Curry often elevate the shooting percentage of teammates. Does the same apply with the hands of wide receivers? Will Cam elevate Wingo's hands? CJ, I don't know if Cam Coleman's presence is going to make Ryan Wingo's catch percentage go up, but you've got so many weapons on the perimeter with this team, and you throw in the running backs, and if you've got a couple capable, even one capable receiving threat at tight end, and you can't double team everybody. So everybody in this offense is going to have an opportunity to eat.
Yeah, look, I don't know if the basketball term is gravity, right? Steph Curry running around and having guys, kind of focus on where he's at all times, creates open looks for other shooters. I don't know if that applies. Maybe a little bit in terms of safeties, but look, that's still on the shooter to make the shot, and that's still on Ryan Wingo to catch the football. So I hope it allows for more open looks, more one-on-ones, more open spaces to run and to be schemed open to if you're Steve Sarkisian. But it's still on Ryan Wingo to look the ball in, corral the ball, and then start making his move after. And we've talked about it. Sterling Burkhalter's now joined the no-glove gang that we've talked about. That's something that I think is a tangible difference from a year ago to today, is the way that these guys are going about practice, kind of breaking old bad habits.
Marcus, there was a question on the one of the threads today over on TexasFootball.com, and it was, hey, which draft eligible player has the most to gain this year? And
that's a good question.
I was my answer was Rasheem Biles, just because I think that stock is just going to keep rising and rising and rising if he has a big year at Texas. And maybe that first round mock by Todd McShay may not be as crazy as I initially thought it was when he made it back in the spring. But to me, it's kind of a tie between Ryan Wingo and Brandon Baker. And Baker, maybe you may say, okay, guard's not a premium position, and maybe he could come back for another year, go back to tackle, and kind of re-elevate his stock as a solid first-round guy. I mean, Ryan Wingo, Marcus, is really in a position where he can play himself into the first round.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. He could certainly play his way into the first round. We know that NFL teams, love guys that are fast and have, a build like his, and there's a pretty high penchant to, select wide receivers, even if it's at the back end or middle portion of the draft. Literally anywhere throughout the draft, if you give them a reason to, they'll pick you. And I mean, you look no further than what the money these guys make. As much as I love to watch some of these different receivers, there's not a world in my mind where Zay Flowers should be getting paid more than Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, yet they are. And so if Wingo can go out there and put together a solid season, and even to the point of the super chat, right? Like in what CJ was saying, like it's hard to imagine a world where coverages don't shift more towards Cam's way, or at the very least, just it's something else you have to consider that you didn't have from the year prior. I think that gives Wingo a ton of opportunity there, and it's something that I think he just has to capitalize on. But even from the time that we were able to get out there, Wingo was the one that was leading the wide receiver drills, right? Like, and we heard about how he led the recruitment of Cam Coleman. So I look at them kind of having a symbiotic relationship, and him certainly being able to benefit from the number of eyes that have to go to the different weapons on the offense.
CJ, are you in the chat talking about Akon songs? Like I'm a little distracted. Okay, I just want to make sure. I want to make sure you didn't get hacked or we ain't got no AI.
See, I told you I was gonna not look at the chat tonight. Now y'all got me wanting to go scroll.
I made the mistake. Yeah, CJ, if I was your third grade teacher at that point, I might have banned you from suggesting songs too. Was that your favorite song in the third grade?
Yeah, you get in the car, you listen to 106.1 Kiss FM, Kid Craddock in the morning, and you get like, I don't know, it was a 2-minute ride, so you get like little snippets of songs.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of them. Stronger by Kanye was another. But I remember, Jeff, it was around the time that the plug-in iPod was just coming out, like the iPod Nano or whatever. So you hook it up to the speaker and you could like finally pick a song, or maybe she's playing off a computer where you had to pay like $1.29 or whatever. And she said, "Anyone have a song?" I said, "I sure do. Funny you ask." And well, it wasn't played.
Yeah, those were bangers when I was in college. So thank you for that, CJ. She was back on the other foot tonight. At any rate, now I want to get to. There's one more super chat I want to get to. Mike, we're definitely gonna get to your super chat. But Justin, I want to get to yours real quick. Said Justin Yarborough, thank you so much for the super chat. As always, said Sark has used the Wildcat a ton in the past. If we see it this year, I think Michael Terry will be the guy. Y'all's thoughts. CJ, here's my take on the Wildcat. I think Sark used it. He used it in 2021 out of necessity, because you go back to the last game of the regular season. It was basically the de facto bowl game because they were a 4-win team at that point. We're going to a bowl game. They didn't, like Casey Thompson couldn't grip the ball at the start of the week. Sark didn't know if he'd have a healthy quarterback. So he basically, I don't even know if it was the Wildcat. Like it was basically, hey, Roschon's kind of the emergency quarterback. And they ran out of the Wildcat. It was so effective that I think Sark carried it over to the next year. And I think when it didn't work with Savion Red, CJ, I think for Sark, it just kind of lost the novelty. And I don't think we'll see it again.
Yeah, look, we had the Row Cat with Roschon for a little bit. We had the Red Cat with Savion Red. We haven't seen anybody outside of a quarterback take a snap since then, Jeff. I think you're absolutely. I think I know the exact moment where Sark said, "To hell with this." It was against Kansas State in the game that Malik Murphy started for Texas, and it was a 4th-and-1 situation, and I believe the ball was fumbled or dropped off the snap from Savion Red and turned over on downs. And I know Texas was leading at the moment, but you kind of just sat there and said, "Okay, we'll never see that again," right? So it's going to take a very, very special but very physical style of running back for that to come back in my eyes. And I don't know if Texas has that right now.
Yeah.
I think you nailed it, Jeff. And I mean, maybe just to close it out, like Arch is your Wildcat. Like I don't need somebody else back there take. Oh, look, bam, there we go. Somebody said it too. I don't need anybody else back there taking snaps with him.
No, that's a hell of a +1. I'm not saying Arch is this guy, but Marcus, back in your day, you didn't need the Wildcat when Vincent Paul Young Jr. is touching the ball every play. There's no.
Yes,
so it was overkill at that point, and it was a detriment to the offense to have anybody but VY fielding the snap. So yeah, I just think I'm with CJ. I just think the novelty for Sark wore off after Roschon, and I don't think we'll ever see it again. But hey, who knows? Maybe we do.
We might not ever see the 6-man offensive line package. I think what broke that was Malik Ogbo catching a pass in the Sugar Bowl against Washington. He was like, all right, we've got to figure out a way to get a tight end on the field here.
Which, by the way, like of all the Sark play calls and plays executed, that doesn't get enough credit for being as like wheels off insane. Like that is a game-winning drive in a college football playoff semifinal. And you're throwing Malik Ogbo a pass as the eligible, like that is wild. Like Marcus, if Texas wins that game, like we're talking about that play for a really long time. Like I remember when Sark went so far off script, they threw Malik Ogbo the ball. Like that's just wild.
But those would be the type of like tendency breakers that I would like to see him employ a little bit more. Now maybe it's with more of a formation and someone that you are kind of a bit more confident in doing that with. But that being said, I mean we've seen him do that in a Big 12 championship game with a defensive lineman that was playing on the offensive side of the ball. So I mean there's moments where it makes sense because it truly is the last thing that opposing team is expecting. Is more times than not something you've never put on film.
Yeah, the Nick Townsend jet sweep against A&M last year, perfect tendency breaker. I don't know if anybody but Sark saw it coming. So that's props to Sark for planning that one out. We'll see. As we get into the season, especially leading up to Ohio State, we'll talk about tendency breakers because those are the kind of games where Sark needs to break tendency, and we'll see if it happens. All right, let's go ahead and thank another one of our sponsors here on the Tuesday night live stream. Welcome our newest sponsor here at On Texas Football. That is Poncho. Poncho makes the ultimate performance shirts for the outdoors. It'll be your go-to for all seasons. They're the best looking, most comfortable shirts that you'll have in your closet. Now they've got their game day collection, and with the game day collection, Poncho has a very, very special deal going on right now. If you buy your team's game day shirt between August 2nd through August 16th, you're covered by Poncho's Natty Back Guarantee. If your team wins the college football playoff national championship, Poncho will give you a full refund on your purchase, and you get to keep the shirt. So nothing beats Poncho's Natty Back Guarantee. Again, if your team wins it all, you get a full refund and you get to keep your shirt. Go to ponchooutdoors.com/ontexas and enter your email to get $10 off and free shipping on your first order. That's PONCHO outdoors.com/ontexas. Head over there, drop in your email, and you get $10 off and free shipping on your first order. And once you try one, you'll get why everybody that has Poncho shirts has a closet full. You're going to love how they fit, how they feel in the Texas heat. You got to love the extra pockets with the zippers to store all of your stuff safely. Again, $10 off your first order and free shipping when you go to ponchooutdoors.com/ontexas and enter your email. And thanks to the fine folks at Poncho for sponsoring On Texas Football. And don't forget to check out their game day collection with the Natty Back Guarantee. All right, let's get back into the supers. Busy night of super chats. Let's go ahead and get to Mike's. Mike, thank you so much. I don't have a hat. I need the
very nice.
Here. I need something. So Mike, thank you so much. It's much appreciated. Building off of the top 25 Longhorns of the modern era, where does Chris Sims land on the all-time list? Seems like he's still paying the price for his mistakes in the 0-1 Big 12 title game. Wish he'd make a return to campus one day. Mike, thank you so much for the super chat.
Great question.
Matt, I don't know if you've got that graphic, but we voted on this. The OTF staff, we voted on it as the three of us. Marcus voted, CJ voted, I voted, everybody voted. The top 25 Longhorns of the modern era. And we went modern era. Credit Blake Monroe. Blake came up with the parameters. 1992 was kind of the line of demarcation. That was when you started having conference championship games. The first year of the Bowl Coalition, where you tried to have a postseason system to crown a national champion. That was the first year of that. It was the first year of 85 scholarships. So 1992 kind of as good a year as any to mark the modern era. That is our list on the screen. I thought about on my ballot, Marcus, I gave really strong consideration to putting Chris Sims at number 25 just for this reason and this reason. Chris had a great career at Texas. He really did. I mean, the valleys were pretty rough and people remember those, but the peaks were really high too. My thing with Chris is you look at all the great players. Chris Sims signed with Texas in 1999. You look at all the great players with Roy Williams, Cedric Benson, all the great players that came after him. Marcus, I don't know if any of that happens without Chris Sims.
That's a really good point, man. I never thought of it that way. And, I think when we were talking about the exercise, I really liked the way you went about it. Mine was more of a feel for how I went with my rankings. But you're right, man. Like as bad of a rap that Chris gets, I think from kind of like Longhorn Nation, if you will, you'll, talk to anybody that, was a teammate of his. And I mean, he was awesome. Like I remember being a freshman and he and Corey Redding were seniors. And, at the time, like Sed B and I think I've told this before, but like Sed B and DJ were, two of the guys that hosted myself and Larry Dibbles on our official recruiting visit, our senior years of high school. Well, when we got to campus, Chris was one of those guys where like he had no problem kind of just helping you to kind of understand what was going on. And he certainly laid a foundation for, all the guys that you named that followed. It was just tough, some of the situations that he was in. And, when you're quarterback at Texas, no different than being the coach at Texas, all of the, all of the praise comes your way and all the criticism does as well. And so in a lot of those games where, people kind of throw ire his way, there were a number of things that, teammates could have done to pick him up as well. But I considered it. I just, felt like the guys that I ended up going with overall, I like their more, I guess, their body of work, if you will, as Longhorns. But if it was just, top 25 teammates, then he would certainly be on there.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I love the makeup of the OTF staff, because we can, but from Bobby all the way down to like CJ and Jordan, like we cover a pretty wide swath of Texas fandom. So we've seen, all of us at various times have seen a lot of guys. CJ, I would imagine, and it's nothing against Chris Sims, but I would imagine Chris Sims probably didn't get much consideration on your ballot.
No, and I obviously feel pretty bad about guys that in that era, right? 92 to 97 specifically. Given I wasn't alive to see it. But, I think Sims, much like Quinn Ewers, is a difficult exclusion given, one, the play on the field, but two, what they meant to the program, right? And how much they helped elevate and ascend Texas to where they were at a time where they were atop of the sport, right? And Texas, of course, not quite there yet, but very close to that. And I think this year is one that you look at and say, if Texas does climb the mountaintop and win a national championship this year, they would not have been in this position without a Quinn Ewers. So I kind of liken the two there. Quinn didn't make my ballot either. In fact, I was looking at the top 25 here. I don't know this officially, but I am going to go out there and say, I think I went 24 of 25 on the final ballot.
I did as well. I was looking at that earlier today. The only one who didn't make it was my number 25, and it's from a pretty, quite frankly, forgettable time in the program's history. But I went Malcolm Brown, defensive tackle. Yeah. Malcolm Brown at 25.
I had Jackson Jeffcoat at 23.
Yeah, it same deal, CJ. Like I think there's something to be said for a guy that comes in as a 5-star prospect and has all these expectations and leaves as a consensus All-American, and in Malcolm Brown's case, a first-round draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think, as you're talking about a lot of it, to your point, CJ, it's kind of like how you experience, the different eras, if you will, and then the totality of this time range. And, to y'all's point, like I had Sean Rogers and David Thomas on mine, right? And a lot of it was just because of, the impact I remember in either watching them or playing alongside them. So.
Yeah, DT was another one, Marcus, that I wish there was a way to put him on there for what he meant to that team in 05. I think people forget how important he was, but it's just at some point it's like, okay, who am I going to take off?
Right.
It would be difficult. Rocky P, I believe, had the comment up here earlier, having Ricky ahead of Vince. Look, there were a few ballots that actually did have Ricky ahead of Vince.
Mine did.
See, there's one right there. I had Vince, just given, again, the national championship run, basically doing everything for that offense. But for multiple years, Ricky Williams was the undisputed best running back in the country. So I always think it's really interesting because, Jeff, Marcus, I don't know how differently y'all's top 6 was in comparison to this, but I feel like for at least the top 5, it was basically just dependent upon what order you had them in.
So I went Ricky Williams 1 for the same reason that I thought about putting Chris Sims at 25. for as great as the Mac Brown era was, none of it happens the way it did if Ricky doesn't come back for a senior year. Just Ricky's importance. It pained me to not vote Vince Young number one because I was like, well, I'm gonna be the guy that makes it not unanimous, but I just feel like none of it happens without Ricky, so that's why I put him there. And I think you forget like not just the rushing record, how many NCAA records that guy set, and just how dominant he was at the running back position. I went Vince Young too. I actually had Derek Johnson ahead of Colt McCoy just because DJ's the best defensive player I've seen in my lifetime at Texas. Like, to me, that meant something. And you're splitting hairs with guys this high anyway. Colt at 4, Casey Hampton at 5, and Bijan at 6. So mine was not exactly that. I had Cedric Benson a little lower than I wanted to, but that was my top 5, top 6, Marcus.
Yeah, my top 5 mirrored this one. Even as you look at it, it's pretty crazy that I played with 4 of the top 5, which is pretty wild.
That's pretty cool.
And then 6, I had Casey Hampton. And Jeff, I know you and I were giving CJ a hard time when we initially saw where old Casey landed on his list.
In CJ's defense, he didn't understand like the criteria of the ballot at that point. So he gets
That's fair. But when we saw it, we were a little frustrated.
Yeah,
the technicality.
I understandably so. I still think I ended up with him a little bit too low. Anyways, I had him at 10. I had Cedric, I believe, at 8 or 9. Bijan rounded up my top 5. But no, all in all, I think it's a fun practice. And again, it's balanced out, right? You get Bobby's encyclopedia brain of Texas football. Jeff, you very much are in that same conversation where from the minute you started watching football, every single year you rattle off a new statistic or member of a team that I just go, who? And you make it look easy. So credit to both you guys. And of course, Marcus, playing with these guys. You get firsthand.
That's wild.
I'm just out here like, what the box scores look like.
CJ had Brian Arakpo. What do you have? Rack 5th, 6th, CJ, somewhere on your belt. You had Brian Arakpo pretty honestly, and then we'll move back on because we got a couple more supers to get to. Man, I probably had Nathan Vasher and Dan Neal higher than anybody else. Like, I think we forget Dan Neal was a 2-time All-American, and Marcus, I know your time at Texas overlapped with Nathan Vasher a little bit. Just talk to Rod and guys that played with Nathan Vasher. They'll tell you, like, there was not a better ball hawk, a guy that could legitimately was All-American at 3 different positions. He was All-American at safety, corner, and return specialist. Just a really, really special player. So I was probably higher on both those guys than the rest of the group.
Yeah, Nate was a monster. We got to try and get him on. He's in the Austin area, so I'll put a little effort to that. See if we can't get him on one of these shows.
Nasty Nate Vasher. Paxton 491 says thoughts on Deontay Foreman's career if he had Sark. I've seen a couple Deontay Foreman questions come through, Deontay Foreman comments. I'll just say real quick, CJ, in 2016, like his skill set, his style as a runner was perfect for that veer and shoot offense. Like, you just need a guy that's just a one-cut, get downhill guy. And if he's got long speed to boot, that helps. Like, yeah, Deontay had a heck of a year, and I loved every bit of it, taking nothing away from him. But, man, for that Baylor-style offense, he was the perfect running back for it.
Yeah, one cut and go. When we built our perfect, ideal Texas running back, Jeff, it was the vision and cut ability that I looked at with Foreman. Just like, there were so many highlight reel plays where you see him pressing the front side of a zone just to break it back the other direction and go 70 yards. So, I mean, he would have been a fun guy to have in this offense too.
No doubt. All right, we got a couple more supers to get to before we're done. And one last time, let's thank our lead sponsor here on the Tuesday night live stream. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Do you want control over your own destiny? If you do, maybe franchise ownership is right for you. If you think that's the case, call Andy Ludicky. He's an expert at placing people in the right franchise that fit your strengths and finances. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And we want to thank Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. I wanted to maybe get into the top 25 tomorrow because Marcus isn't here tomorrow. That's why we had to switch things up. But covering it tonight is no big deal. Maybe we might talk about it tomorrow because, again, practice tonight. The Longhorns are off tomorrow, so we won't have any like practice to talk about, but we'll make do with what we got. All right, let's go ahead and get to these super chat. Davis Ray with the super chat said, "My little Longhorn starts kindergarten tomorrow.
Hey, let's go.
Hello, parents and Hookem. Dropped my third grader off for her first day of third grade today, and I tell you, I'll be honest with the listening audience. I had to text the group. The only thing more disjointed than the Texas offense in the first half of last season was the pickup line at school on the first day of school. It was CJ. To say it was like herding cats would be an understatement. It was nuts. Never had that long of a trip to the pickup.
My kid's getting a bike.
There you go. My nieces start school tomorrow too, so I want to give them a little shout out up there in the Dallas area. All four of them: Madison, McKinley, Mason, and Marley.
Come on.
Yeah. Y'all know what the worst part of my trip to the pickup line was? So my daughter goes to school where my wife works, and my wife was directing traffic. We're finally leaving on the way back home. Like, what does my daughter say? Oh, can I stay with mom? Like, yeah, just drop you off right here. So kind of waited in that 35, 40-minute pickup line for nothing at the end of the day. No, it's all good. Dropped her off and picked her up on her first day of third grade. So, yes, parents, especially you parents dropping yours off for kindergarten, good luck with that because that could go a number of different ways. So, shout out and best of luck on that tomorrow. Rocky P with the super chat. Thank you, Rocky P. I said, Marcus, full pads are going on. That started tonight with practice. What was that feeling like? Were players hitting harder than normal in those first practices?
Man, it's just like I said, it's like Christmas. You've been, working since spring ball ended, especially for the guys that, had any type of nagging injuries that they had to get cleaned up. And so it's just an opportunity to go out there and kind of showcase everything that's been building up to that. I don't know if anybody's hitting harder than normal per se, because you still want to make sure you do your job. You still want to make sure you're, being smart. These are your teammates, that kind of thing. But it's definitely, the best part of the year, the first time you get to go out there and hear some pads popping and, they try to be smart about it, but, you still take guys to the ground. So it's fun time for sure.
No doubt. All right, Rocky P, thank you for the super chat. Spence GPT2, thank you for the super chat. Said, love this trio. Shout out to Matthew as always. Another day closer to Texas football. Yes, as of today, we are 25 days away from the start of the season. Hey guys, real quick before we wrap it up, Marcus, I'll start with you. Final thought, anything you didn't get to that you need to get off your chest real quick before this live stream ends?
Nothing that we haven't either kind of covered on one of these or that y'all haven't been covering over on ontexasfootball.com. I mean, I definitely love to hear that Derek Williams is, kind of starting to take the other safety spot by the reins. And, I'm interested in seeing who kind of comes along with them. And, look, I think there are some little mini battles to kind of have some things sorted out. But I think that's another thing that kind of has me so bullish on, this team's prospects is for the most part, you kind of have a lot of known quantities, especially at some of your most pressing positions. So that's something that continues to make me feel good about, the shape that the roster's in. As we're heading into this, I guess, middle part of the second full week of camp.
No doubt. CJ, you got the last word tonight, sir.
Look, I think full pads is where you'll really start to see guys separate themselves in these battles, right? Of course, you're going to need to understand your assignment, what your responsibilities are, show it consistently. But boy, football is a physical sport. As you say, football is a man's sport. Full pads is where you'll really get to see these guys separate themselves into roles that these coaches can really rely on them for when the season begins. So I'm all for it. I'm excited for tonight to hear what's going on over at wherever they're practicing this evening. And then on Saturday, look, scrimmages are a big piece of this too. Can't wait to hear about it.
I think Sailor Joe says it perfectly. Pray for no bad news tomorrow. Hey, keeping healthy is the biggest thing in all of this.
Yep.
So let's hope that is the case. Whether it's padded practice or scrimmages or whatever, let's hope that remains the case for this 2026 team to get on a championship trajectory. All right, that's going to do it for the Tuesday night live stream. Marcus, CJ, thank you guys for the time, knowledge, intel, and expertise. As always, huge shout out and thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, the MVP here at On Texas Football, doing a great job as always. Big thank you to our sponsors. That's Andy Ludicky of My Perfect Franchise. Shout out to Mark Saunders, Poncho, and Prize Picks for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Football. If you're not a member over at OnTexasFootball.com, we've referenced the site multiple times tonight. Make sure you get over there right now as soon as you can and take advantage of our limited time offer. $3 for your first 3 months of access for new members. We've got practice coverage, breaking news, recruiting information as it comes. If it's happening on the 40 acres, we're talking about it over at OnTexasFootball.com. Very, very busy day today with the content and the message board fodder over at OnTexasFootball.com. So come on, join the fun. Jump in with both feet. $3 for your first 3 months of access. Do not hesitate. Take advantage of this limited time offer that we've got. Hey, before we're done, make sure you hit that like button on this. Make sure you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel as well. And make sure you've got your notifications set. That way, anytime we go live or drop a new video, you're not going to miss any of our Longhorn coverage or breaking news. Thanks, everybody, for the chat. Keeping it lively. Thank you for the super chats, as always. If you had anything that we didn't get to tonight, you got a question, comment, concern, whatever it is, you can direct it to the guys bright and early tomorrow morning at Coffee and Football. Marcus is done for the scheduled broadcast week as far as live stream goes. CJ and I will be back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock here on the channel with your Wednesday night live stream and that crazy wild wheels off Wednesday crew. Love you guys. Looking forward to it as always. So with that said, for Marcus, for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.